Part 24. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 231. 3 Giant Cannons. 3 Giant Cannons. Major General Li Wiki looked at the position of the giant cannon on the electronic map that had just been exposed and was covered by the black area again. He was so anxious that a little sweat broke out on his forehead. Why are the Allies so crazy? Usually a huge cannon has already hit. Oh my god, why are there 3 giant cannons built in the same base now? Rovitsky gritted his teeth and seemed to be a little tangled. General, the 3 giant cannons are no joke. If we attack, the casualties will be much greater than we previously estimated. But before, Wangling, we have used self-destructing trucks to blow up so many things in the Allied base. This is a rare opportunity. If we give up right now, it won't be long before the base regains its strength. This is neither an advance nor a retreat. What should we do? Major General Li Wiki did not answer, but stared at the electronic video. Instead, King Xiaoping reminded him, "Why are you so anxious? Wangling hasn't given up yet, and we're going to lose the chain here? Don't forget, there is still one self-destructing truck that is useless. But all the previous 9 have exploded. How can the remaining one have any big effect?" Rovitsky was somewhat disapproving. But King Xiaoping laughed instead. What's different is that the 9 self-destruction trucks can be said to be laying the foundation. This last one, if used properly, is likely to completely turn the tide of the battle. Really? Let's wait and see what Wangling will do. On the battlefield, Wangling looked at the sudden change and felt a little anxious. He clenched his fist and hammered the apocalypse tank in front of him. Damn it, he is determined to delay us. Really? 3 giant cannons, you are quite ruthless. After finishing speaking, Wangling looked across the apocalypse tank and looked inside the Allied base. He was silent for a moment, and then suddenly the corner of his mouth curved. You want to delay? I just don't have the patience to continue to waste time with you. Agent Tanya, that bastard, shouldn't have been killed, right? Huh. Apocalypse tank, come on, it attracted the firepower of the 3rd cannon to me. Under his special instructions, the 2 full-blooded apocalypse tanks beside him responded and rushed forward. After the apocalypse tank operation, Wangling hurriedly ordered the last self-destruct truck to keep a certain distance behind the apocalypse tank. The apocalypse tanks were not very fast, but after all, they had been parked outside the Allied base, and the distance was not too far away. As a result, the 2 apocalypse tanks in front of them quickly broke into the Allied base and rampaged all the way. It didn't take long. Then he entered the range of the giant cannon. Boom! And the 3rd giant cannon had been waiting for a long time. At that moment, a cannon was fired out and exploded on an apocalypse tank. The explosion caused by the huge shell also caused another apocalypse tank to explode, followed by blood loss. Ordinary tanks are affected by the shells of the giant cannon and usually sway greatly. However, the apocalypse tank body is extremely heavy and it is not affected by the bombardment of the giant cannon. It only shakes slightly and the health volume is reduced by about 7 or 8. Just one part. In this way, the 3rd cannon was successfully restrained in its firepower. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the last self-destructing truck finally had no scruples, accelerated its speed, passed the apocalypse tank, and plunged directly into the enemy's heart like a poison-extracting dagger, arriving at the power plant unimpeded. Next to the building complex, and then stopped next to a power plant, the nuclear fuel was detonated independently. Another deafening roar was heard from the sky and the earth. The last pillar of fire rose into the sky, attracting the attention of almost everyone on the entire battlefield. The super-strong shockwave spread out in an instant and swept away, destroying all 6 power plants in the vicinity. 4 other power plants were damaged to varying degrees. The nearby tanks were also affected, and a considerable number of the remaining soldiers were also affected. It was a tragic death. Two phantom tanks that were originally disguised as big trees exploded. By the way, 3 grizzly tanks were damaged, and a distant light tank was also blown to pieces. This last explosion was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. It could be said to have caused extremely serious damage to the Allied base. Of course, the most serious damage caused by this explosion was the power supply to the Allied base. 6 power plants exploded and 4 power plants were damaged. Such damage cut off the power supply to the Allied base in an instant, and the light prism tower stopped turning, the cannon stopped bombarding, and even the crack generator lost its effectiveness, exposing the entire Allied base to the electronic map. Ha ha ha, well done. Brothers, it's time to charge me. The power is out. The giant cannon and light prism tower are useless. Guys, take this opportunity to push down the entire base. Rush. Roar. Dot. The power outage in the Allied base can be said to have lost the last means of defense. The cannons that the Allied forces were most afraid of were also disabled. The troops who were originally surrounded finally couldn't stand it any longer. Under the orders of their respective captains, next, they began their final charge. Among them, the Wolf Squad was no exception. Under the temporary command of Sun Dehua, they rushed to the top of the mountain and met with Wang Ling, waiting for the final attack order. But Wang Ling ignored them immediately. Taking advantage of the Allied power outage, he also observed the Allied base on the electronic map. After such a long period of harassment and containment by the coalition forces, plus the attacks of 10 self-destructing trucks, the base can now be said to be abandoned. However, even so, there are still a large number of buildings remaining in the base, and there are even a few defensive units exist, mostly grizzly tanks and multipurpose infantry vehicles. But these were not what Wang Ling cared about. After searching for a while, he finally found his target, Agent Tanya. Tanya's life was tough enough and she was not killed by the self-destructing truck. However, the situation in the base was over. Tanya didn't seem to want to risk her life. She actually led 3 soldiers and 1 person wearing a general's uniform and ran into the distance. Flew away from a helicopter and got into the aircraft one by one. This girl is going to run away. It's your grandma's anti-aircraft crawler, don't let that helicopter escape, shoot it down. Seeing this, Wang Ling finally couldn't calm down anymore and shouted hysterically. After receiving the order, the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle also quickly began to charge, aiming directly at the helicopter. However, the speed of the helicopter was no slower than that of an anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. After the 5 people were loaded, it immediately took off and flew away from the battlefield. The anti-aircraft tracked vehicle at the front was moving very fast. During this period, it finally managed to reach the helicopter and fired one after another. But in the end, it only knocked out the helicopter's health, and allowed the helicopter to fly away smoothly, escaping from the base. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 232. In the game Red Alert, all military units have this characteristic. No matter how low their health is or how serious their injuries are, as long as they are alive, they have the ability to continue fighting and operating, and this helicopter is no exception. The helicopter carrying Agent Tanya and the Allied general was obviously at a loss of health, and it looked like it could be shot down with 2 more shots. However, the helicopter, despite its serious injuries, could not fly. After leaving the battlefield, he quickly disappeared into the electronic map. Those anti-aircraft tracked vehicles lost their target and would not go too far into the Allied base without other orders, so they all withdrew back to the Wolf Squad. Damn! You bastard, you actually ran away with your tail between your legs. This situation made Wang Ling furious. He almost gritted his teeth, and the sound in his throat was like a wild beast. On his right hand, he involuntarily released a strong electric current due to his rage, almost covering Wang Ling's entire body. The sound of the electric current made people's scalp numb, and the constant surging electric light revealed that the intense danger is frightening to watch. This was the first time that even the members of the wolf team had seen Wang Ling in this state. They were stunned for a while, and then hurriedly took a few steps back for fear of being swept away by the electric current. They had already seen the terror of Wang Ling's electric current, and they didn't want to try it. In the team, Sun Dehua, Erlu, Li Tong, Gu Xuanwu, and others were already old acquaintances with Wang Ling, but now that they had glanced at each other, they did not dare to touch Wang Ling's troubles at all. Just as he was hesitating about what to do, Wang Ling suddenly withdrew the electric current, his chest heaved exaggeratedly, and not long after, he shouted hysterically, "Listen, Wolf Squad, beat me hard, this I will kill everything in the base and leave no trace behind." Roar. Finally receiving the order for the general attack, all members of the Wolf Squad let out a long roar as if they had been given a shot of blood. Sun Dehu and others breathed a sigh of relief. Although Wang Ling was furious, since he could still give orders, it meant that he had not lost his mind. Then, the wolf team went crazy. With Wang Ling as the leader, the entire team rushed forward at a rapid speed. The momentum was so fierce that it almost overwhelmed all the attacking troops. At this time, the eagle team also happened to charge here. After seeing the posture of the wolf team, Chen Tong was stunned, and then Chen Tong quickly shouted, "Wang Ling, what the hell are you doing? You agreed that as long as Tanya dies, the rest you won't rob me." Chen Tong suffered a defeat before and was eager to overthrow the space with his own hands to regain his confidence. During the days of rest, he had discussed this with Wang Ling. But at this moment, Wang Ling couldn't care about this. His eyes were almost like flames. After stopping, he glared at him and made a cold voice, "Tanya, run away. I have fire, no, if you send it out, I'm afraid I'll rebel." After finishing speaking, Wang Ling stopped talking nonsense, turned around and led the wolf team to continue charging. Chen Tong trembled violently from behind. He could feel the strong anger in what he just said. If he really wanted to stop Wang Ling at this time, he might really make Wang Ling go berserk. "Damn it, you guy. Listen, Eagle Squad, don't give him Wolf Squad face, you can push him as much as you can, the time has come to avenge the shame, come to me." But after calming down, Chen Tong was not happy either. Now, the Wolf Squad can't stop them, but there's no problem competing with them for battle glory. These two teams have a lot of grudges with this base. Now that they have finally found an opportunity, how can they still hold on? Everyone seemed to be on stimulants, running rampant, and all the allies that could be touched, whether it was buildings, soldiers, or tanks, would be arbitrarily uprooted. Wang Ling, who was furious, urgently needed to release the anger he was holding in his heart and rush to the front of the team himself. His speed was much faster than that of ordinary soldiers. When others were pushing across the base, he had already rushed in alone. Not long after, he encountered two half-health grizzly tanks, so the battle broke out. Wang Ling's most powerful attack method now is naturally the electromagnetic attack. Relying on the super long distance and large-scale connecting properties, he looks like a death-like figure on the entire battlefield. But now he gave up the advantage of distance, and concentrated a large amount of electricity on his fist, roaring and rushing towards the grizzly tank closest to him. This guy, not to mention giving up the distance advantage, even the attack method of the magnetic blast infantry has been arbitrarily changed, becoming the most passionate naked combat. Naturally, the grizzly tank would not just watch him approach and fire back quickly, but the ordinary grizzly tank had limited damage to soldiers, not to mention that Wang Ling was already a 10-star soldier king after intermediate enhancement. He was stunned to brave the bombardment of the artillery shells, crouched close, swung his fist with lightning arcs, and hit the grizzly tank hard. Boom! There was only a crisp and ear-splitting sound, and the half-health grizzly tank moved more than 10 centimeters to one side. Wang Ling's body has already undergone intermediate strengthening, and his quality is far beyond that of ordinary people. His speed and strength are terrifying. In addition, he is furious, and the power he exerts is even more ferocious. With one punch, the grizzly bear the tanks were actually a little overwhelmed. If it were just pure physical strength, Wang Ling would have nothing to do with the grizzly tank now, but the lightning arcs wrapped around his fists were not ordinary. In one punch, they were all driven into the inside of the grizzly tank. A large amount of electric light surged, destroying it from the inside out. The half-health grizzly bear tank simply could not withstand such torture. As a result, it could only last for less than a breath before it exploded. With one punch, he actually killed an enemy tank. This scene, through electronic video, was inadvertently observed by some people in the army, and they all gasped, "What kind of monster is this? How powerful can one punch be?" But Wang Ling had no time to care about what other people thought. After blowing up a grizzly tank, without stopping, he immediately shouted again and punched another half-health grizzly tank. The second grizzly tank also exploded. After killing two tanks one after another with naked hand-to-hand combat, Wang Ling was still not satisfied and turned to hit a power plant next to him, with the same fist wrapped in thunder arcs. This power plant was previously affected by a self-destructing truck explosion. It was not completely destroyed, but half of its health was already blown away. After the explosion of the self-destructing truck, a green radiation layer will be left behind, but this radiation layer will only last for a short time. Now it has disappeared. Wang Ling broke in alone, and there was no need to worry about anything. Boom! 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 The building is not like a tank, and its resistance to Wang Ling's meat fists and thunder arcs is slightly higher, but Wang Ling doesn't care at all. He punches one punch after another, and every punch falls with a considerable amount of thunder arcs. The results are continuous. After more than 10 punches, the power plant finally burst completely. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 233. Boom. As the last punch fell, the surging electric light finally exploded the entire power plant. Whether it is the Allied or coalition forces, there will be more or less soldiers working in every main building, and this power plant is no exception. The two working soldiers were also exposed after the explosion. Roar! But before they could react, Wang Ling let out a roar and quickly approached them. He grabbed both of their throats with both hands, picked them up, and broke their necks with a flick of his wrist, killing them instantly. But it was not over yet. Even though they were dead, Wang Ling did not let them go. Strong electric current surged in his hands. The two corpses were shocked to pieces before they disappeared. The cruelty of this method made all the officers and soldiers watching the battle gasp. Ah! After conveniently throwing the almost disappearing body aside, Wang Ling looked up to the sky and shouted. There was a fire in his heart, but he still had not been able to fully vent it. The shouting resounded, and it contained endless anger, making the entire Allied base feel frightened. Swish! Swish! And this also brought some disasters to him. The two light prism tanks in the distance that had already lost their health were directly aimed at Wang Ling. They fired two light prism rays from a distance and hit Wang Ling accurately. Ling's body, the afterglow diffused in an instant, rendering the entire area gorgeous. But within this splendor, there is also endless murderous intent. The rays of this light tank are extremely lethal to ordinary soldiers, let alone two shots in succession. After Wang Ling was bombarded, he half knelt on the ground involuntarily, with some injuries already appearing on his body. However, Wang Ling has now experienced intermediate strengthening and has been promoted to the level of 10-star Soldier King. These injuries are not too serious for him. Not only that, these two light prisity tanks also attracted Wang Ling's attention. His almost bloodshot eyes slowly glanced over them, and a cold voice gradually came out, "You are seeking death." As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Ling clenched his steel teeth, looked extremely fierce, and quickly rushed towards the light tank. "How dare you let him get close to this light tank?" At that moment, he was also trying his best to launch light prism rays to attack Wang Ling. Normally, Wang Ling wouldn't dare to catch these light prism rays, but now he didn't care about it at all. He blocked it in front of him with his left hand, carrying the light prism rays with his body, and moved forward quickly. After he resisted 4 emission lines back and forth, he finally came to the light tank, then jumped 3 meters high, clenched his right hand into a fist, and electric light emerged, forming a 2-meter long and wide space in front of his fist. With a roar, his thunder arc fist smashed hard against the nearest light prism tank. There was only a loud boom sound, and the light prism tank exploded. After landing, Wang Ling didn't stop, and threw a punch to the side, driving the thunder arc giant fist out, and another light tank was also instantly killed by it. From the time he took action to the end of the battle, it took less than 2 breaths. The 2 light tanks were completely destroyed. Speaking of which, the armor of this light prism tank itself is not very high. It was affected by the self-destructing truck before and had a lot of residual health. Only Wang Ling's bombardment could be so smooth. Otherwise, if it were replaced by 2 light prism tanks with full health, he would also. There is no way to achieve such a clean and instant kill. With Wang Ling's current strength, he could release electromagnetic attacks from a long distance and quickly kill the 2 light prism tanks. But it was different now. He used the most direct close combat to blow them up. In this scene the shock was far better than the long-distance bombing. Looking at the eyesight of the other officers and soldiers, they were also frightened. However, seeing Wang Ling charging alone and performing miracles repeatedly, the people in the large army finally couldn't stand it any longer. Under the shouts of their respective captains, they charged forward with all their energy. There are a large number of soldiers surging on each of the 3 roads on the mountain. They are so densely packed that it makes people's scalp numb. The troops that had already rushed to the top of the mountain arranged 3 arc formations in a tacit understanding. They swept away as much as possible with a brute force like a strong wind sweeping away fallen leaves. Whenever the large troops passed by, all the Allied troops were defeated. All the buildings were overturned in an instant, and the entire Allied base was like a leaf of duckweed floating on the sea, turbulent and swaying. At the front of all the large forces, Wang Ling was bending over and breathing exaggeratedly after destroying the 2 light tanks. His left arm hung weakly to the ground. The entire arm seemed to have been roasted by flames. The skin was ripped open and a thick layer of skin had been peeled off. Even the flesh and blood were burnt in many places and oozed from it. A large amount of blood was flowing down his arm to his palm, and then dripped from his palm to the ground. Soon the ground was stained red with his blood. This kind of injury was naturally painful, so painful that Wang Ling grimaced, and his face even turned slightly pale due to the massive blood loss. But it was precisely because of this pain that Wang Ling returned to his normal mental state. His previously soaring anger was gradually suppressed by it. Now he is using his still intact right hand to support his knees and seize the time to rest and relax. Recovering. His current injury is very serious, but because of his identity as a player, he does not have a health bar, but if he does have one, it may have been reduced by half. It is precisely because of his status as a player that many of his functions are different from the military units in this game, such as his recovery ability. After the intermediate enhancement, Wang Ling had the ability to recover on his own, but his speed was much lower than that of a normal 3-star elite soldier. However, it was better than nothing. With the help of this recovery ability, the injury on Wang Ling's left arm could not heal quickly, but the bleeding was gradually contained. After there was no more blood dripping, Wang Ling slowly straightened up and shook his left arm. The current injury still caused severe pain all the time, but compared to the pain during the intermediate strengthening, it was nothing compared to the pain, and Wang Ling could completely bear it. Not only that, although his anger gradually subsided, the war was still going on. After adjusting his condition, he raised his right hand to release electricity from a distance, and then blasted towards the combat laboratory in the distance. At this time, this battlefield has also entered its final stage of intense heat. 3 large-scale mopping up circles swept across the battlefield. All the Allied forces were routed along the way. Troops were wiped out and buildings were pushed aside. It was truly a sight to behold. It's a piece of armor that leaves nothing behind. At the front of the mopping circle, 2 troops charged particularly fiercely. They were Wang Ling's Wolf Squad and Chen Tong's Eagle Squad. The 2 troops had more or less grudges against this base. Naturally, they worked extremely hard in the final charge. They even abandoned their usual tactics and ignored what they encountered. See, as long as it belongs to the Allied forces, it is the target of its attack. Coupled with the mopping up by the coalition forces, the originally mighty and solid Allied base was encroached and pushed across at a speed visible to the naked eye. It didn't last long before it was completely traversed by the mopping up army. And as the last light prism tower was demolished by the army, the last Allied base that resisted on this battlefield was finally completely eradicated. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 234. We won. We won. Ha ha ha, we won, we won. Well done, I love you so much. Damn it, these bastards are finally dead. Ha ha ha, it's finally destroyed. We won this battle, ha ha. Oh. 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 Dot. As the last Allied building was demolished and the battle was won, almost all the officers and soldiers participating in the battle became excited, shouting and howling. The sound wave, one after another, was so loud that it was so shocking that it made people go crazy. Numb. What's more, they even burst into tears, completely disregarding image and face. Before this battle, there were several cheers after the other 3 Allied bases on the battlefield were bulldozed, but obviously, those times could not be compared with this scene. This time it can be said that the entire army was there, cheering, and shouting hysterically, trying their best to express various inner emotions. The destruction of the last Allied base also symbolized that this battlefield was completely pacified, and the fruits of victory on the entire battlefield were successfully obtained by the coalition forces. Could they not be excited? A gust of cool wind blew from the distance, blowing through this turbulent battlefield, and it was uninterrupted, and unknowingly blew away the smoke that had shrouded the battlefield for a long time. In the sky, the few dark clouds that had originally gathered disappeared, and the moonlight cast down, brightening the entire battlefield, as if it was also waving flags and shouting for the victory of the coalition forces. Coalition Base Command Post. Ha ha ha, finally, it's finally over. 3 giant cannons, darling. But what about the 3 giant cannons? They were pushed down in the end. Ha ha, this battle was really beautiful. Zhao Pingwang and Rovsky also cheered excitedly. Even Major General Li Wiki slapped the controller and laughed, beautiful. In this way, the battle on this battlefield will be completely different. It's completely over, we won, and we won beautifully. At the same time, cheers also appeared in another coalition command post. Damn it, how long have I been waiting for this day? It's finally here. Haha, all these bastards from the Allied forces will go to hell. This man, who was full of foul words, had quite a distinctive appearance. He had a short head, a round face, dark skin, and an unshaven beard. There was a scar on the right cheek, and his mouth was full of yellow teeth. When he smiled, he always had a sinister feeling. His body looks very strong, but he has a slovenly look. He has his sleeves rolled up, as if he is ready to fight at any time. The Major General epaulets on his general uniform are particularly obvious. This person is naturally the commander of this base, Major General Luo Er. After Major General Luo Er cursed, he focused his attention on Wang Ling in the electronic video and praised him from the bottom of his heart. This person is the Wang Ling that Lao Li mentioned before, right? It's not simple. He looks older. Big, but very sophisticated in the use of troops and layout. Although the fighting is a bit crazy, I like it. On the side, a deputy echoed, yes, after Sun Dehu came back from his great service more than a month ago, he was full of praise for Wang Ling. I had investigated his information and paid special attention to him. This person is indeed not simple. The past record is very brilliant. Even on this battlefield, we have made achievements. Now we can calm down this battlefield so quickly. It can be said that it was a decision of Wang Ling from the beginning, which broke the balance of the battlefield with the Hound team. Haha, the evaluation is quite high. But he, Wang Ling, can afford this evaluation. If you have the opportunity another day, remember to get close to him and see if you can get this kid to come under my command. Huh? This is poaching, General, are you serious? Oh. Oh. On the battlefield, the soldiers were still cheering and shouting. The long shouting even made many people's voices hoarse. The joy of victory seemed to spread to every corner of the battlefield. However, among this group of people, there is one person who is special, such as Wang Ling. Although he won, Wang Ling was not happy at all. He was even filled with dissatisfaction and resentment. In this battle, Wang Ling had only one main target, and that was Agent Tanya. But he never expected that after the power outage in the base, and seeing that the situation was over, Agent Tanya would actually run away with the base commander with their tail between their legs. Returning to the battlefield from the police dog training base, it can be said that Wang Ling's goal from the beginning was revenge, but now this goal seems to be getting further and further away from him. After Tanya escaped, she didn't know where she would appear next, and Wang Ling wasn't sure whether he would meet this guy again. Damn it, bastard. Thinking of this, Wang Ling gritted his teeth in anger, and arcs of electricity flashed involuntarily on his right hand. Captain, don't rush for revenge. Sooner or later we will meet Agent Tanya. Yes, didn't you say before that the Allies were going to start a decisive battle? Since it is a decisive battle, Agent Tanya should also go to that battlefield. We can definitely meet him. Just when Wang Ling was angry and upset, Gu Xuanwu and Li Tong, who had been cheering for a while, suddenly found Wang Ling. After all, they were the ones who recruited Wang Ling from the police dog training base in the first place. Of course they could guess Wang Ling's goals and his current mood. The first sentence of advice fell in Wang Ling's ears as if he had not heard it, but the next sentence made Wang Ling's eyes light up. Yes, if the Allies want to start a decisive battle, they must naturally bring back as many troops as possible. With the importance of Agent Tanya, they will naturally go to the battlefield for the decisive battle. Although we still don't know what the situation will be like on this battlefield, there is indeed a chance that we can meet Tanya again. Thinking of this, Wang Ling's anger finally subsided a little, and then he shook his head with a wry smile. That's almost enough. Are you done celebrating yet? At this time, Major General Li Weiqi's voice rang out from the radios of all the officers and soldiers on the battlefield. In an instant, it drowned out all the cheers. Everyone was forcibly quiet and continued to listen to the news on the radio. After stopping the group of officers and soldiers, Major General Li Weiqi continued, "Our mission on the battlefield has been successfully completed and all enemies have been successfully destroyed. First of all, I want to say to everyone, well done. However, I don't know what your respective captain, have you ever told you about the overall situation of the current battle for hegemony? After we deal with the enemies on the current battlefield, we will soon make a long-distance migration and rush to the battlefield for the decisive battle. It was obviously the first time for many people present to hear this news, and their brows were raised high. The joy of winning was gradually diluted. Those who had already heard the news nodded lightly. The current battle was just to lay the foundation for the decisive battle. We don't have a lot of time. After tonight, we will have a week of rest and adjustment time. After a week, the two bases will start marching. Now don't just focus on celebrating. The seriously injured will come back in advance on tracked vehicles. Go to the hospital for treatment, others hurry up, stay stationed and rest, and rush back to the base early tomorrow morning. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 235. Yes. After receiving the latest order, all the officers and soldiers on the battlefield responded with a standard military salute. Their movements were uniform, and they shouted, as if the mountains were shaking. The radio contact was interrupted, and the officers and soldiers on the battlefield did not continue to celebrate. From the start of the battle to the end, a long time had passed. It was now late at night. After the excitement, these officers and soldiers were inevitably a little tired. As a result, those soldiers who were full of health had begun to set up tents in a large area. Although they were on the original enemy positions, after all the Allied forces had been wiped out on this battlefield. During their rest time, there is no need to worry about enemy attacks anymore. As for the seriously injured, they were all selected by each team and sent to anti-aircraft crawler vehicles. Although the scale of the battle this time was huge, it was a one-sided crushing battle after all. The number of seriously injured people in the large army was not large, and they were quickly arranged. There were also some in the Wolf team. After everyone got on the car, Wang Ling was about to let the tracked vehicle retreat early, but unexpectedly, Sun Dehu actually pushed Wang Ling. "Captain, what are you doing so stupidly? Get in the car." Wang Ling was confused for a moment. Which car did I get on? I'm not a seriously injured person. This time it wasn't just Sun Dehu, Erlu was also joking. "Anyway, we still have a lot of tracked vehicles, Captain. You are also injured, so let's go back together." Li Tong also nodded and said, "Yes, Captain, look at the wound on your arm. It hurts when I look at it." Even Gu Suanwei was saying, "You are now the leader of the Wolf Squad. Don't be so pretentious. Heal your injuries as soon as possible so that we can save some worry." Wang Ling was speechless for a moment, with an embarrassed expression on his face, but he felt warm in his heart. After a while, he sneered, "Okay, then I'll be lazy and take the car back in advance. Dehu, during these few days when I am away, I will leave the Wolf Squad to your command. Don't worry, Captain, you took this position from me in the first place. While you're not here, let's have fun acting as our agent for a few days," Sun Dehu said confidently. Wang Ling smiled and cursed, then didn't say anything more. After getting in the car, he followed several wounded people in the team and started the return journey one step ahead. Behind all the seriously wounded, the tanks with remaining health were also gathered together. Finally, they were escorted by some half-health tanks. They returned to the base ahead of the rest of the group and entered the maintenance factory in advance. The anti-aircraft crawler vehicle left the mountain at a very fast speed and returned to the base in less than 2 hours. Wang Ling got out of the car and greeted Major General Li Wiki and the three of them before setting off again to the field hospital. In the hospital, there were a lot of wounded soldiers transported from various battlefields. It was almost dawn when Wang Ling and the others arrived, but the staff in the field hospital were already busy. Just one hall was filled with people of all types. The wounded soldiers, some with injuries to their arms and legs, were partially covered with bandages. but some of the injuries were so serious that the whole body was almost covered with bandages, just like a mummy. As for Wang Ling and the others, it seemed that Major General Li Wiki had greeted them in advance. As soon as they arrived, a nurse came to confirm their identity, and then took them upstairs alone to find a lieutenant-level surgeon. Physician. The wounded soldiers transported from the battlefield basically suffered from external injuries, and Wang Ling and others were no exception. Now this surgeon was obviously very experienced. After making a brief diagnosis, he began to treat them vigorously. All the wounded were quickly bandaged with medicines. Some of them were too seriously injured and needed to be pushed to the operating room. Those things are none of his business. After the intermediate level of strengthening, Wang Ling already had a relatively slow self-healing ability. Now with the aid of these drugs, the recovery speed has also been greatly accelerated. Wang Ling can clearly feel that his bandaged left hand is slowly healing. The earth becomes strong again. However, when they first arrived at the field hospital, the doctor obviously would not let them go so quickly. After the treatment, he asked a nurse to take everyone to a collective ward. They would have to live here until they recovered from their injuries. Wang Ling did not refuse and checked in smoothly. After all the hard work, the sky was gradually getting brighter, but Wang Ling and the others had not slept all night. After the battle, they were tired from traveling and traveling. Taking advantage of this time, they all lay down on the hospital bed. Then he fell asleep. This time Wang Ling did not choose to return to the real world. This different dimensional system is really special. The injury on Wang Ling's arm may have already appeared in reality. It would be more difficult to return to the real world without completing treatment in the red alert world. Uncomfortable. Although the revenge target escaped, the joy of winning the local war inevitably affected Wang Ling a little. After closing his eyes, his whole body felt relaxed and he slept until noon before waking up. In this red alert world, sleeping in is a luxury. This time it was rare that no one would disturb him. Wang Ling stretched hard after waking up, and his whole body felt lazy. After lazing around, Wang Ling subconsciously wanted to put his arms behind his head and lie on the bed comfortably for a while. However, with this touch, a sharp pain came from his left arm, which made Wang Ling unstoppable. Ling Du took a breath of air, turned his head and looked at the bandage on his arm before remembering that he was still a wounded person now. Looking at the bandage on his arm, Wang Ling couldn't help but recall yesterday's decisive battle. Tanya ran away, and Wang Ling went crazy. Even if he fought naked, he was so bold that he used his arms to resist the attack of the light tank. Not to mention that the officers and soldiers who saw it at first were frightened by this approach. Even Wang Ling felt a little scared when he thought about it now that he had calmed down. Darling, that is a light tank. It is very lethal to infantry and has an extremely long range. Under normal circumstances, no matter how powerful the soldier type is, they will stay far away. How can you dare to be as crazy as Wang Ling? Resistance and counterattack. Just resist hard. In the end, Wang Ling was still alive, but he destroyed the two light tanks with residual health at the cost of being injured. Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh when he thought about this result. It seems that after the intermediate level enhancement, plus the level of the 10-star Soldier King, I am almost like an invincible little strongman. Wang Ling laughed at himself. However, the recovery speed of this injury is not comparable to the table. For an ordinary 3-star elite soldier, if he is injured like me, he will probably be healed by resting for a night without any medicine, but I have bandaged it with medicine and rested for such a long time, and it still hurts. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 236. It's no wonder that Wang Ling complained so much. Whether he was a conscript or a magnetic blast infantry, he had already been promoted to the level of 10-star Soldier King. In this red alert world specially designed for him, he was already at full level, but after recovering in terms of efficiency, it is actually not as good as those ordinary 3-star elite soldiers. He is a player, and he has the halo of the protagonist in this whole world, but in this aspect he is not even comparable to the natives in this game world. This makes Wang Ling inevitably criticize him every time he thinks about it. Seeing the recovery speed of those 3-star elite soldiers, Wang Ling was very jealous. From what Uncle He said before, it seems that this ability will be strengthened in the later advanced enhancements, but when will that happen? Moreover, to this day, Wang Ling still remembers the pain of intermediate strengthening. It was the only time he had ever seen it, and he was a little scared every time he recalled it. This is only intermediate strengthening. If it is advanced strengthening, how painful will it be? Huh. Suddenly thinking of this, Wang Ling shuddered violently. Sir Wang Ling? I'm Xiao Ding. I'm here to change your dressing. Just as Wang Ling was thinking about it in his spare time, a young nurse suddenly came outside the ward, checked Wang Ling's identity based on the bed number, and took out a bunch of medical supplies. Wang Ling was disturbed, blinked, and seemed a little confused. Change the dressing in half a day. However, when he thought that the red alert world was quite different from the real world, Wang Ling felt relieved. He didn't give the little nurse any trouble. He sat up cooperatively and stretched out his bandaged left arm. The nurse skillfully removed the bandage and exposed Wang Ling's arm. With his self-healing ability, coupled with the assistance of these drugs, after sleeping this time, the injury on the arm has been healed to some extent, and most of the skin on the epidermis has regrown, leaving only some of the most severely damaged areas are still slowly healing. The little nurse seemed to be used to injuries like this, so she didn't think it was strange. She washed away the remaining healing medicine with potion, reapplied the medicine and bandaged it, then she smiled with relief and said, "Congratulations, sir, your injury has recovered very well. All goes well, you can be discharged from the hospital soon." So fast? I only stayed for half a day. Wang Ling was a little confused for a while, and the wound on his arm has not healed yet. Why are you so anxious to drive me away? The nurse must have been used to this kind of question, so she immediately answered with a smile, "Sir, please forgive me, your injury is no longer in the way, and it will be almost healed in a while. Now during the war, a large number of people are injured every day. There are not enough wards and beds for wounded soldiers, so lightly wounded soldiers cannot stay in the hospital." This little nurse put it mildly. In fact, to put it bluntly, there are too many wounded soldiers now, and many of the people who come to this field hospital are seriously wounded. The beds in the ward can be said to be reserved for them. As for Wang Ling, the injury on his arm was no longer relevant. It was really outrageous to occupy a bed again. To put it bluntly, it was like occupying a latrine and not shitting. After knowing this situation, Wang Ling didn't make it difficult for others. He smiled and said, "Okay, I understand, but I haven't eaten for a long time. I will not be fined if I eat your lunch here, right?" The little nurse was a little dumbfounded. "I can't do this." "Okay, I'll leave after dinner." Wang Ling stretched out exaggeratedly as he spoke. The little nurse looked a little anxious. "Sir, be careful. After all, there is something on your arm, it hurts." "Oh, okay, okay, isn't this injury a problem?" Wang Ling was still a little impatient. The little nurse was speechless. After saying hello to Wang Ling, she went to change the dressings of other wounded people. After Wang Ling did some activities, he found the wounded members of the wolf team and told them to return to the base after they recovered. After eating something at the hospital, he got on a specially prepared anti-aircraft crawler vehicle and rushed to the base. On the way, Wang Ling recalled the process of being kicked out of the hospital, which was a bit funny. He almost forgot that this was the red alert world, which was different from reality. In reality, Many hospitals are eager for you to stay in the hospital, and some even want you to stay for a while after you recover, so that they can pay more for treatment. But it doesn't work here. The battlefield hospital is basically a non-profit model, and there are never enough manpower on the battlefield. Even the doctors don't want the wounded to be lazy in the hospital and try their best to treat them. As long as the injury is not serious, then it will definitely be treated. Kick you out of the hospital. After comparing the two, Wang Ling could not help but shake his head and sigh for a while. It has to be said that the speed of this anti-aircraft crawler vehicle is indeed much faster than that of infantry marching. Wang Ling returned to the base a few hours later. Those large forces that went to attack the Allies have not returned to the base yet. Looked at the electronic map, and was still running around halfway. But here at Wang Ling, he had already received treatment, was almost completely recovered, and even had a good sleep. Sure enough, technology changes life. Without these large troops, the base seemed a bit empty. Wang Ling stayed in the tent boredly, closing his eyes to rest. Anyway, the battle on this battlefield was over, so there was nothing to worry about anymore. It was not until nightfall that the members of the large force returned to the base one after another. The originally empty base became lively again. This night was destined to be restless. The battle was won and the battlefield was completely pacified. Now, both the base and the main force are still immersed in that joy. Because they had received the order from Major General Li Wiki, they were not in a hurry to rush to the decisive battlefield, so the group of officers and soldiers held a celebration banquet that night. Because of the war, these soldiers rarely had the opportunity to drink on the battlefield, but at the celebration banquet, all kinds of fine wine specially brought during the day were put on the dining table one after another, making almost all the officers' and soldiers' eyes light up. This place is different from the real world. Not only the atmosphere, but also the personnel are too different. After marching and fighting on the battlefield for so long, who is not an iron-blooded man? Almost all the officers and soldiers present were a little greedy for wine. However, now is not the time to have fun. Before the banquet begins, there is another most important awarding ceremony. If there is a war, then there will naturally be military exploits, and heroes will emerge in troubled times. The most direct manifestation of these military exploits is military rank. Normally, the level of this group of officers and soldiers is not high enough to hold a special investiture ceremony, but it is different now. After winning the war, Major General Li Wiki took advantage of this momentum and did not hesitate to hold this ceremony. After the war, he also happened to use the investiture ceremony to inspire the soldiers. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 237. In this conferring ceremony, Wang Ling was undoubtedly a major protagonist. All in all, Wang Ling has made a lot of military exploits since his last promotion of military rank. He cooperated with the troops from all directions to resist and annihilate the reinforcements from the three major Allied bases, annihilated the Blue Allied base, and then planned to break the final one. At the Green Allied Forces base, these three great achievements were told by Major General Li Wiki in public, and everyone present was convinced. As for the upgraded military rank, Wang Ling is quite self-aware and knows that this promotion will definitely be not small, and he might jump 2 ranks in a row. But in the end, when Wang Ling heard about his new military rank, his eyes widened. Because of these 3 great achievements, he actually jumped 3 levels in a row and was promoted to captain. Darling, although the 3 battles are cumulatively rewarded, jumping 3 levels in a row seems to be too exaggerated. Before this investiture ceremony, Wang Ling was only a second lieutenant and had just stepped into the rank of lieutenant. But now, after jumping 3 levels in a row and becoming a captain, this is already the highest level among lieutenants. It is even 1 level higher than King Xiaoping and the same as Rovitsky. This news made Wang Ling unbelievable for a while. When others heard the news, they also looked sideways. However, when they looked at Wang Ling, they were surprisingly not jealous. Even Chen Tong, who had always been arrogant, had to be convinced. He even took the lead in applauding, and some even cheered. Shouted. After all, this is Wang Ling's actual military exploits achieved by relying on his own strength and that of the Eagle Squad. The troops in this world are quite different from those in reality. General Li Wiki did not take offense to the shouting during the award ceremony. He just smiled and passed by, personally wearing a new shoulder patch for Wang Ling and issuing the award certificate. After being in a daze for a while, Wang Ling did not show any pretense. He performed a standard military salute and then happily accepted the new military rank. Although the others were not jealous, the envy in their eyes was undisguised. They were all like light bulbs with dozens of watts, which was quite interesting. Naturally, not only Wang Ling, but also everyone else's military ranks also changed significantly. Originally, when Wang Ling first came to this base, Chen Tong was a great sergeant like him. Now that the local war is over, this fellow has jumped 2 levels and became a lieutenant. Although he is still 2 levels behind Wang Ling, it doesn't count. Low. In addition, Hu Ben was also promoted to the rank of second lieutenant, and the captains of other squads, as long as they had military exploits, were all promoted to 1 rank. After the commissioning of each captain was completed, the ranks of the 2 adjutants, Zhao Pingwang and Rovsky, also changed. Zhao Pingwang was promoted from captain to major, also jumping 2 levels in a row. Rovitsky was only promoted 1 level, but he was still a major. Originally, Wang Ling thought that his military rank had surpassed Prince Xiaoping and was on par with Rovsky. However, in the end, he was still lower than them, which made Wang Ling a little depressed. In addition to the captains and 2 adjutants, the ranks of other soldiers in the base also changed significantly. Taking the Wolf Squad as an example, the veteran members all jumped 2 ranks in a row, and even the new recruits who were added later had their ranks improved. The situation of the Eagle Squadron is somewhat similar. All members have been promoted to 1 rank, but those who jumped 2 ranks in a row are only a few heroes among them. Tiger Squad and Eagle Squad are in the same situation. As for the other teams, their combat achievements are naturally inferior to these 3 teams, but there are also many soldiers among them who have successfully been promoted to a first-level military rank with the help of their accumulated combat achievements. Of course, after all, there are too many soldiers in the base, and Major General Li Wiki does not have time to personally wear new epaulets and present certificates of award. In this process, the captains of each team and 2 adjutants are also involved. After nearly 2 hours, this large-scale conferring ceremony finally came to an end. And then, it was the banquet that all the soldiers were looking forward to. They all rushed forward like wolves and tigers, almost competing for the wine. The cooks in the base also showed their special skills and put out tables of delicious food, accompanied by many fine wines. The group of officers and soldiers had broken Coca-Cola, they were chatting happily, pushing glasses to change glasses, and there were shouts and shouts everywhere. There was hip-hop everywhere, mixed with shouting for drinks and some arguments. The whole scene was really lively. The war has been going on so far, and celebration banquets of this scale are very rare. All the officers and soldiers also cherished this opportunity, letting go of their bodies and minds to have fun, eat and drink. After a banquet, it lasted more than 4 hours. As time passed, as many officers and soldiers were pushed to the ground, and all kinds of fine wine and food were squandered, the banquet ended successfully. Even the commander of this base, General Li Wiki, also participated in this banquet. However, for someone in his position, he really can drink a lot. Several captains joined forces to drink him. Instead, those captains, after being drunk, he was now slumping on the ground and falling into a deep sleep. Seeing the embarrassment of this group of people, Major General Li Wiki also couldn't laugh or cry for a while. During the banquet and celebration, the entire base felt like a holiday, but after the banquet, Major General Lewicki arranged for some sober soldiers to take turns patrolling. Although the war here is over, routine patrols still have to be carried out. Wang Ling didn't care about those things anymore. After the intermediate strengthening, his resistance to alcohol had also been strengthened. Although he was still a little dizzy, he didn't show any signs of being drunk. Following the few soldiers in the wolf squad who survived, they carried all the drunkards from the wolf squad back to the camp. After washing briefly, they lay down on the bed. Finally, they contacted Uncle Hay and returned to the transfer station. "Haha, boy, have you drunk too much?" Uncle Hay looked at Wang Ling with a smile on his face. Although Wang Ling was not drunk, he was still a little dizzy. He smiled and waved his hand. "It's not a problem, it's not a problem. Just go back and have a sleep. By the way, Uncle Hay, I haven't counted how long it has been. Have you passed the points situation? There must be a lot." Uncle Hay nodded slightly. "Yes, I haven't done statistics in the past 2 months. Be prepared to be bombarded by this data. Since the last count, you have accumulated a total of 924 survival points in the red alert world. You have killed 864 allied soldiers of all types, including 18 1-star veterans and 12 3-star elites. A total of 8,850 points, downed 8 allied fighter planes, 240 points, annihilated 194 allied tanks of all types, including 12 1-star veteran tanks and 8 3-star elite tanks, a total of 4,160 points, destroyed all types of allied tanks. 55 defensive facilities, 2,750 points, destroying 37 main allied buildings, 3,700 points. The green allied base command post was taken away by other troops. It's none of your business, but the blue allied base command post is destroyed in your hands, 500 points. Add to that the 14,692 points you accumulated before, and now you have a total of 35,816 points. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 238. 35,816 points. Tisk tisk, boy, the accumulated points collected in one go are enough. More than 20,000 points have been recorded. After counting, Uncle Hay was also happy for Wang Ling for a while. When Wang Ling heard this number, he was a little surprised. However, it is just a bit surprising. This number is not that exaggerated. I remember that when the points were tallied last time, Wang Ling took the initiative to ask for a battle to protect the oil production plant. After a series of events, he and the dog squad destroyed an allied base, and then faced 3 other large allied forces to encircle and suppress them, and broke through the encirclement. After making great achievements in battle, when the points were tallied, there were more than 10,000 new points. But this time, Wang Ling and the Wolf Squad were even more ambitious. They had several encounters, and then participated in Chen Tong's offensive plan. They blocked and annihilated a large number of Allied reinforcements, and took advantage of the situation to overwhelm the entire Blue Allied base. And finally personally commanded the self-destructing truck to break into the Green Allied base. This battle achievement is even better than last time. A one-time income of 20,000 points is really normal. Wang Ling is not too little, which is already good. The reason why he was surprised was that Wang Ling remembered the rules that Uncle Hay had said before. The points level was calculated in aggregate, and the points consumed before would also be included in the calculation. Before the intermediate exchange, Wang Ling had used the exchange system many times, but the amounts were basically small and could be ignored for the time being. But after the intermediate redemption was unlocked, Wang Ling had directly consumed 15,000 points at once. Adding in the current 35,000 points, it already exceeded 50,000. I remember Uncle Hay said that if you want to unlock advanced redemption, you need to accumulate 100,000 points. Now this task is half completed. This mid-level redemption is already so awesome, what about the high-level redemption? Will there be anything new? Although Wang Ling also has some fears about future advanced enhancements, expectations are inevitable. Wang Ling shook his head and put these reveries behind him. Wang Ling directly called up the exchange system, locked the intermediate exchange, and made a choice on the troop conversion. Uncle Hey, I want to switch to a new troop. Uncle Hey was a little surprised. Why, are you tired of playing with the 10-star magnetic blast infantry? Wang Ling smiled and shook his head. No, after the magnetic blast infantry reaches 10 stars, it is indeed too powerful. It has strong combat effectiveness and practicality. How can it be tired of it? However, in the Red Alert world, isn't the 10-star Soldier King already capped? Well, if you continue to use the magnetic blast infantry, the experience of killing enemies will be wasted. Anyway, I can switch to master the weapons of future arms at any time, and it is guaranteed, so of course I have to use the new arms to fight. Yes, thank you for being able to think of this. I thought you, the magnetic blast infantry, would be too happy to miss you when you reach the 10th star. Uncle Hay asked with a smile. So, what kind of army do you plan to convert to? This is a problem. The elite combat soldiers that Wang Ling wants most have not yet been able to reach this game. He has been coveting the time travel technology for a long time. His camp does not have that kind of technology, and the remaining units in his own camp are too limited. Crazy. After many eliminations, there was only one choice left in the end. Let's just go with the anti-aircraft infantry. When talking about the anti-aircraft infantry, Wang Ling felt helpless. To be honest, this unit is not very powerful in the Red Alert world. When attacking ground tank targets, the damage is almost negligible. Against infantry, the lethality is quite good, and it also deals splash damage, but the key point is that the ground range is not far enough, making it difficult to defeat enemy infantry in a one-on-one duel. In terms of air defense capabilities, the power of a single anti-aircraft infantry is also very limited. It is estimated that it is no more than an unleveled rocket pilot, and its own damage is definitely not small. And the most important thing is that the status of this anti-aircraft infantry is really embarrassing, even a bit useless, and anti-aircraft crawler vehicles can completely replace it. Comparing the two, the functions of the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle in all aspects are far superior to that of the air defense infantry. Speaking of the biggest advantage of the anti-aircraft infantry, it is that the training cost is cheaper than making the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle. If there were other arms to choose from, Wang Ling would not choose this arm. Such a choice was really helpless. We can only hope that his protagonist Halo in this game world can play some role, and there will be surprises when he grows to a 10-star Soldier King. Air Defense Infantry? Okay, Uncle Hay nodded, snapped his fingers, and the unit conversion was successful. Wang Ling immediately felt that his consciousness was in a trance, and there were many more pictures in his mind. Those were all the air defense training he had done as a recruit. Experience in the infantry branch. This experience can be said to have been forcibly poured in, which directly saved Wang Ling from several months of recruit training, and forcibly tampered with the system program, so that this experience was also added to the minds of other people in the game, so that Wang Ling no one would be surprised if Ling changed arms at any time. This scene was very long, and Wang Ling took it in his mind for several minutes before it ended. But compared to the months of training for new recruits, these few minutes are almost negligible. These images seem to be imprinted on Wang Ling's mind. In just a few minutes, Wang Ling became familiar with the anti-aircraft infantry and reached the passing standard for entering the battlefield. This kind of infusion experience is strange to say the least, and it does not affect Wang Ling's memory, just like memorizing the script in advance before acting in a movie. After all, there had been a conversion record before, and Wang Ling had already been mentally prepared. This time, he didn't feel much surprised. After the reception was completed, Wang Ling's troop conversion was finally over. Now he can transform into an air defense infantry at any time in the red alert world. However, this is not over yet. The anti-aircraft infantry has no advantage in the first place, and they have to start from the levelless level and slowly upgrade. This is a waste of time. There is a labor-saving method at the moment, and Wang Ling will not waste it. Uncle Hey, continue to exchange for military experience books. Snapped. As Wang Ling finished speaking, Uncle Hey snapped his fingers again, and the Air Defense Infantry Unit experience book was successfully exchanged. Wang Ling was in a trance again, with a lot of air defense infantry training content instilled in his mind. With the help of these experiences, Wang Ling he was directly promoted to a 1-star veteran. Wang Ling is even more familiar with this indoctrination process. Every time he is promoted in the red alert world, he will basically have such an indoctrination experience, and he has long been used to it now. However, due to habit, switching arms at once, and receiving infusion from the experience book, Wang Ling's already dizzy brain became even more exhausted, and his whole person felt drowsy. Uncle Hey, I won't stay any longer. I'm exhausted. I'm going back to rest first. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 239. Switching arms and exchanging arms experience books can consume a full 10,000 points. However, this is obviously no longer a problem for Wang Ling now. Even if he uses these 10,000 points, there are still 25,813 points left, which gives him a feeling of wealth. Compared with the consumption of points, Wang Ling is still concerned about his own condition. He drank a little too much in the red alert world. After being indoctrinated by military class switching and experience books, his mental state has reached the critical value now. If you keep pushing hard, you might fall asleep directly in the interdimensional transfer station. As Wang Ling finished speaking, he disappeared directly into the transit. At the same time, Wang Ling, who was originally lying on the bed in reality, suddenly opened his eyes after returning to consciousness. Wang Ling had long been accustomed to this kind of shuttle between the two worlds, and was no longer surprised. Just when he was about to turn over and sleep in the dark, he suddenly felt a sticky feeling under the quilt, which was very uncomfortable. What the hell? Wang Ling cursed angrily. He opened the quilt and saw that he was stunned on the spot, where his left and right arms were placed. Whether it was the sheets or the quilt, they were all stained with blood, and there was no trace of blood on them. All dried up and covered in blood, it looked very oozing. He had been busy with the investiture ceremony, celebration banquet, and military service change before, but he had neglected this matter. It was only now that Wang Ling suddenly remembered that he was a wounded person, and his injury was not serious. Even though he had spent so long in the red alert world, in reality it was only a few hours. When he was injured by the light tank on his left hand, the blood flowed all over the floor in the red alert world. This system is two-sided. If you are injured in the game, you will also be injured in reality. This blood is undoubtedly the result of the injury at that time. The time difference between the two worlds is somewhat interesting. After Wang Ling was injured, he stayed in the red alert world for nearly a day. Coupled with drug treatment and his own recovery ability, the injury on his arm has healed, not to mention healed. It was almost done, only some more seriously injured areas were left, and the skin and flesh had not yet fully grown. But in reality, it has only been so long, and the blood stains left after the injury have not dried up. However, this did give Wang Ling a headache. Although he wasn't a germaphobe, the mattress was soaked in blood and looked like this, and it wasn't dry yet, so he really couldn't sleep on it. After thinking for a while, Wang Ling simply changed positions, wrapped the remaining wounds on his arms with toilet paper, and climbed directly onto the upper bunk. As for his own mattress, he should tidy it up after he wakes up. He really can't stand it now. During this sleep, Wang Ling really lost track of time. He slept until the afternoon of the next day and woke up from hunger. In the world of Red Alert, sleeping in is a luxury. Even during war, you may encounter enemy attacks in the middle of the night. How can you sleep lazily like in reality? After waking up and comparing them, Wang Ling found them a bit funny. After regaining his composure, Wang Ling went out after washing up, made up for a lunch, and then returned to the dormitory to start cleaning up. After sleeping this night, the injury on Wang Ling's arm has completely healed, but the mess left by the injury is not small. Wang Ling has been busy this afternoon, changing the sheets and bedding, and then taking them to the bathroom to wash them vigorously. Don't stop until all the blood stains are washed away. After finishing these tasks, Wang Ling sat down on the new bed, crossed his legs, and swayed the 5 fingers of his right hand, and circles of arcs surged, which was particularly attractive. Along with the rhythm of his 5 fingers, the muscles on his right arm also undulated exaggeratedly, looking full of strength. Wang Ling now has undergone earth-shaking changes compared to before he came into contact with the extra-dimensional system. Back then, he couldn't even pass a simple physical test. He looked weak and weak, but he had no tenacity. But now, after continuous strengthening and such a long period of training and fighting in the Red Alert world, Wang Ling's physique has improved by leaps and bounds and is extremely strong. The muscles all over his body are not deliberately tense, but his figure has become more and more toned, his body surface is as solid as a rock, and ordinary swords are difficult to cause effective damage to it, his strength is even more terrifying, and he can even shake a tank with a full punch. Of course, this is just the change in Wang Ling's physical fitness. The most terrifying thing for him now is the weapon gifted by the different dimensional system. The Soldier King's Babisha submachine gun is easily unusable in this real world where guns are banned, but the electromagnetic device of the Magnetic Explosion Infantry King is not expected to be this way, and it has been buried in his right hand in an alternative way. Normally, it's not obvious, but once it's used and used with all one's strength, the power is quite terrifying. The most important thing is that Wang Ling can also control the intensity of this electromagnetic force by himself, which is very practical. Diddy. Looking at the electric arc on his right hand, Wang Ling couldn't help but smile proudly after thinking about it for so long. But at this time, a message suddenly came from his mobile phone. He picked it up and saw that it was from his roommate Wei Bowen. Wang Ling, look in the group. In the group. Wang Ling was a little strange. He was annoyed by the large groups in the department and usually blocked them. He couldn't see any news at all. After receiving Wei Bowen's prompt, he quickly opened it and took a look. It turned out that the instructor had made the announcement. Half a month later, the physical fitness test will begin to be retaken, so that all students who fail the physical fitness test should practice hard so as not to be embarrassed when the time comes. Physical fitness test? Ha, I really miss it. Wang Ling muttered, shook his head and smiled, and replied nonchalantly to Wei Bowen, it's just a 1,000-meter run. Pediatrics. Isn't it right? Wang Ling's 1,000-meter long-distance running, which almost exhausted Wang Ling to death, is now a bit inferior to Wang Ling's eyesight. After training in the Red Alert world, you can handle it easily even before the injection of physical enhancement agent, let alone now. But Wei Bowen is still not at ease. I know you have been exercising recently, but the way you were so exhausted at the beginning is really worrying. This time you take the makeup exam, I dare say that bastard Zheng Long will definitely come to see you having fun. It depends on you whether you will be laughed at or slapped in the face by your strength. Shenkei and Yuking and I will also go back to cheerleading for you, come on. Okay. After replying with a simple 2-letter letter, Wang Ling put down the phone, but was secretly happy in his heart. It was not in vain that Wang Ling valued his cheap roommate so much. He had to pay for medical expenses even if he delayed the primary strengthening. These three bad friends cared about him at the critical moment. The trivial matters are over, and the makeup test for the physical fitness test will take another half a month, so there is no need to worry. Wang Ling's daily life has not changed much. At night, he went to the Red Alert world safely and had a solid sleep. In the Red Alert world, many people in the Wolf Squad were drunk last night, but the army would not tolerate them. The wake-up call sounded as usual the next morning, and everyone got up for a morning run, washed up and had breakfast. Although the local war is over, after the indulgence, military discipline still needs to be emphasized. After breakfast and the patrol mission was arranged, Wang Ling suddenly had other ideas. Now, you should be able to go back and see Xiaohe, right? Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 240. It has been quite a while since we last said goodbye and left the police dog training base. Wang Ling himself is too emotional and nostalgic. In reality, he also likes dogs. Although he was on the battlefield during this period, there were many times when he was thinking about Xiaohe. I don't know if this guy has eaten well since he left. Will he be obedient? Is he so heartless and happy every day, and has he forgotten his old friend? Missing the police dog Xiaohe that he had personally trained for several months, Wang Ling couldn't help but smile. But when he thought about the scene when Xiaohe broke into the kennel violently when they were parting, and when he thought about the scene of Xiaohe crying and executing the last order he gave before parting, Wang Ling felt uncomfortable again. Now that the battlefield has been completely pacified, the entire army has a week of precious time to rest. Wang Ling doesn't want to miss this good opportunity. It's time to go back and visit Xiaohe. Do it as soon as you think of it. After making the decision, Wang Ling immediately went to the command post, found Major General Li Wiki and the others, and expressed his thoughts. After all, we were leaving the base. This kind of thing had to be reported to the superiors. Major General Li Wiki and the others did not embarrass Wang Ling. The request was approved immediately, and Wang Ling happily exited the command post. Of course, when going to visit Xiaohe, Wang Ling had no intention of going by himself. He specially called Sun Dehua, Erlu, Li Tong, and Gu Suanwu from the Wolf team, and they just made up enough for one car. These four people had nothing to do during this week, so they naturally did not refuse. They just took advantage of this opportunity to go out and relax. After everyone got into the vehicle and the location coordinates were determined, the Samsung anti-aircraft crawler vehicle set off in full swing. Hey, Captain, I've heard you talk about Xiaohe many times since you returned to the battlefield. This time I have to take a closer look to see what's so attractive about this guy. The distance from the battlefield to the police dog training base is not short, and it won't take a while. Naturally, chatting on the way is unavoidable. For example, the person who said this is the idiot. Sun Dehua sarcastically said, "You don't know, don't you? We also have police dogs in our base. Do you think there is anything attractive about those police dogs? With police dogs, you have to get along day and night and develop a relationship. That will make it regard you as its master and partner. At that point, no one can live without the other. Haven't you seen that each of the police dogs in our base has a trainer?" Erlu said, "Oh," and then something suddenly sounded, "cultivation of feelings. The love between humans and dogs is not over yet." Nonsense. This sentence made Wang Ling angry, and he slapped Erlu on the Tianling cap, causing the guy to scream in pain for a while. But Wang Ling was reprimanding, "You brat, you don't have the right tone when you speak." Ha ha ha. The other three had had enough of laughing. After laughing, Li Tongke said, "Last time we went to invite the captain to come out, I saw Xiaohe. At that time, I got excited and punched the captain. Xiao He also wanted to bite me. Come on. I was feeling very noisy and a little angry at the time, but now I see that Xiao He is really good and very protective of his master. When I see it later, I have to feed it some pieces of meat myself. Why? Just when Wang Ling was about to say yes, Erlu suddenly jumped into the conversation and exclaimed, "What did you say? Did you punch the captain at that time?" "Hey, the captain didn't tell us this." "Captain, you can't favor one over the other. No, I'm going to punch you as well to balance it out." "Damn it. Shouldn't you punch him for me and avenge me? Why did you, a bastard, come up with your idea? Do you deserve a beating? Do you want to die? Ha ha ha. Dot. Otherwise, all the members of the wolf team like to hang out with Wang Ling. Wang Ling, except when fighting, usually has no airs at all. Anyone dares to joke with him, although he often makes Wang Ling anxious. Yes, but it was basically a joke and no one cared. Along the way, Erluk took this characteristic to the extreme and kept having fun, so the atmosphere was not so dull. After a few hours, the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle finally arrived at the gate of the police dog training base. After jumping off the tracked vehicle, Sun Dehua and the others stretched themselves hard. After sitting in the vehicle for such a long time, their bodies were inevitably a little uncomfortable. Wang Ling, on the other hand, stared at this training base, full of nostalgia. After being away for so long, he was finally back. The anti-aircraft crawler vehicle stopped in front of the gate, and Wang Ling and the other 5 walked over after watching. Currently, in front of the gate of the training base, there are 2 mobilization soldiers standing guard. Judging by their military rank, they are 2 first-class soldiers. Naturally, these 2 people also noticed Wang Ling and the other 5, but they did not dare to stop them at all. Instead, they quickly performed a military salute to show their respect. In the army, military ranks are strictly hierarchical and generally very strict. Among the 5 people, Wang Ling is the captain, Sun Dehu is the captain, and Erlu is the second lieutenant. Even Li Tong and Gu Suanwu, who subsequently joined the Wolf Squad, are already sergeants. This lineup is an absolute high-ranking official in the police dog training base. Even the commander of the entire base does not have a high status like them. How can the 2 guards not respect him? Wang Ling took the lead, returned the greeting, and then asked, "Is Lu Hui here? Take me to find him." "Yes." The guard quickly agreed and walked into the training base with Wang Ling and the other 5. Or else it is a place specially trained for police dogs. As soon as I entered the base, I heard the barking of dogs from a long distance away. As a veteran breeder who has lived here for several months, Wang Ling was right, this voice feels very friendly. The total area of the training base is not too large. Under the leadership of the guards, the 5 people quickly found Lu Hui's office without even announcing it. After knocking on the door twice, they pushed it open and walked in. Wang Ling's visit this time was purely impromptu. The base did not give any news to the training base. Lu Hui didn't know about it yet. When he heard the movement at the door, Lu Hui, who was reading the report, immediately frowned. He raised his head and just thought he was scolding him, but when he saw the person coming, he was immediately stunned. Then, Lu Hui smiled, "Haha, Brother Ling, what brought you here?" As he spoke, Lu Hui stood up. He was about to give Wang Ling a bear hug, but due to his professional habits as a soldier, he glanced at the ranks of Wang Ling and the 4 people behind him, and was immediately startled. Damn it, 2 sergeants and 3 lieutenants. With this card, how could he, a sergeant, dare to be so casual? He quickly performed a very standard military salute.